I think there are some pretty simple and basic mods that everyone that has an 0304 Cobra should probably do to these at some point, and I'll go over what that reason is throughout this video. Now, one unfortunate reality about these cars is their age, and what I mean by that is when these cars were brand new and the power that they were putting out it just wasn't common at all. And for back then, it was a lot. But when you jump ahead 16, 17 years to where we are now, 18 years later, the power that these are putting out completely stock is not that impressive compared to a lot of brand new stuff that's out right now. But one thing I've seen over the past few years as far as people that own these cars, they kind of fall into a few different categories. There are the people that buy these just strictly as collector cars. They'll sit unmodded, undriven, in plastic a lot of the time, and they buy them as a collector car. They're not driven, which is fine if that's what you want to do with yours. There's the other handful of people that buy these cars and drive them like I do, but within that dichotomy, there's two different aspects of that. They're the people that mod them, keep them exactly as they are and drive them, and the other half of people that do drive them around, but they have it completely stock and they don't really want to. Either they don't want to mod it or they're just unsure about doing it. Now, I'm not saying that if you have an 0304 Cobra that you have to mod it. That's not the point that I'm trying to make. It's completely up to the owner what they want to do with the car. The point that I am trying to make is that if you have one of these cars and you don't mod it, there's an aspect of this car that you're missing out on. Like I said at the beginning, these cars completely stock by today's standards aren't really that impressive. You have to be honest. I mean, these will pull close to 400 at the wheels, completely stock, which is respectable. But when you start comparing it to a lot of other vehicles that are out now, it's far below that bar of being able to keep up with a lot of other stuff. If you compare this to like even a base model GT Mustang with a Gen 3 Coyote, I think those are rated at 460. You take out drivetrain loss percentage, but also you have to give it props for the automatic transmission, which makes them quicker than a standard like this. And it puts them at a pretty much at an area where they're more powerful than these are, which is to be expected jumping ahead that far in time and technology. But there's a bunch of other cars out there too that fall within that realm too. Other Camaros, Infinitis, BMWs. I went through a whole list of different cars that I looked up before doing this video, and there's quite a few out there that are rated around the same 400 horsepower mark as what these are completely stock. When I first bought this car, it wasn't modded beyond having an off-road X-pipe and Flowmaster exhaust system. After I got it, it seemed like it was powerful to me. I hadn't been in a Mustang in a long time, so it seemed like it had power, but it didn't really come alive until I did the pulley swap on this with the 276, until I did the exhaust system and a JLT intake. And that put me at the 480 at the wheel mark, which is about 520, 530 at the motor. After doing that, the car felt more like its reputation. The car's reputation, completely stock, 16, 17 years ago, it didn't need to be modded in order to reach that pinnacle of everyone held this car to as far as a standard. But now, you really can't do that as much because there's so much other stuff that has caught up with this car and surpassed it with it being completely stock. So unless you mod these, you're not really getting the full effect of what these cars really are, in my opinion. I feel like you're just missing out on something because doing the pulley, the exhaust, and the tune on this changed the car so much from where it was completely stock to where it is now, which in all aspects isn't really modded all that much to to get to 500 at the wheels, basically. But it feels so much more different. It's so much more of a different car than what it was when I first got it. And I feel like, you know, I don't want to come across as saying, oh, you didn't mod your Terminator, so you're doing something wrong. It's like, again, I'm not trying to convey that message. What I'm saying is you're just kind of missing out on one little aspect of it that this car offers that you're not going to get until you start modding it. And once you do that, you throw very few mods on this thing, it surpasses all those other cars that I just mentioned earlier in the video that are right on par with what these are for the most part when they're stock. You go to that next level of modding these beyond the basic things that I've done with mine, when you start doing fuel system stuff, either a ported blower or an aftermarket supercharger on it, that's a whole nother level of performance and power you get out of these, and that's what I plan on doing with mine in the near future. But as it sits now, it's a really fun street car, and as it was in stock form, it was fun too, but it's just different once you start throwing mods to it. In my dyno video that I did, I made the comment that after I did the mod suit with the pulley, the exhaust, and the JLT intake, and it was putting down 480 at the wheels, I said the car has always been a Cobra, but with these mods now it feels like a Terminator, and I still stand by that. I don't think the car lives up to its Terminator reputation in stock form compared to every other car on the road now. And for the people that I mentioned earlier in the video that drive these and own them but don't really mod them at all, that's perfectly fine. I built this car and I'm building it to not to street race, but when I come across someone, I just want to be able to go up to them and say, it's a small 4.6 liter V8 that was made 16, 17, 18 years ago. It's nothing special, but sure, I'll race you anyway. And then when they get completely friggin' annihilated, they're like, what the hell just happened? Because they don't expect that to happen, especially when you explain it like that, where it's just an old Mustang with a small V8 engine in it. It's really not that great. But what you can turn these into is a lot more. And I'm not building this to drag race. I'm not building this to go street race everyone that I see on the road. But I want something that's powerful, where I can really just put people in a position where if they lose to me, that wasn't what they expected at all. I know there's some fast imports running around my area. I know of a 600 wheel horsepower WRX. I haven't personally seen it, but I saw it on, I posted about it at a local shop that dyno tunes a lot of imports. And that's the kind of car that I want to come across on the street, where they have all this money dumped into this car. I had a WRX before, I had an STI. I looked into building both of them, and it's expensive. It's a lot of money to get one of those cars of that level of performance compared to what it takes this to get to that level of 650, 700 horsepower in one of these. And to have them just get completely annihilated by something like this with very little money put into it compared to what they have into something like that. And of course, I'm building this as a show car too. I feel as though having an aftermarket blower on it really helps that aspect compared to it being completely stock, because everyone knows what to see. They know what to expect underneath the hood if they know what the car is. But when you pop the hood and you see a VMP, a Kenny Bell, or a Whipple under it, then they're like, oh, that's something special. It's definitely not making stock power at that point. I considered going the route of just porting the blower to the stock Eden, but for, I think, the cost of what it is, either buying a ported Eden or sending this off to get ported versus the power gains you get from it, I just don't think the money spent and the power gained is really worth it, in my opinion. I think most of these pull like around 520, 530 at the wheels with a ported Eden on them, depending on what level of port you go, but it's somewhere in that ballpark. And I'm already at 480 right now. I don't see spending that money on a different stock supercharger that's ported, or porting this one just to get to that level is really worth it in that aspect. So I would rather go the aftermarket supercharger route and make some real power with it, the 600 plus, 650 plus range, where you're really getting your value for your money at that point. I know there's a ton of videos online of first mods you should do to your Cobra, and I'll just cover that real quick. Like if you want to get to that next level of what these cars are really capable of, you really need to do a 276 pulley or a 2.9. The 276 does spin it pretty fast, so you're probably going to want a different alternator at that point, because that becomes problematic. 276 pulley or 2.9. 2.9 is fine too. It's perfectly fine to do a 2.9. Exhaust, mid-pipe, and catback system, you can leave the stock headers on it, and a JLT intake. All those together, it's not a lot of money, and the performance that you get out of it power-wise is a great return on your money spent. And that really brings the Cobras up to that next level, where I think they're capable of the name Terminator at that point, where completely stock, yes, they're Cobras, but you can't really call them Terminators at that point as far as what they do on the street, because there is so much more out there that will absolutely they'll absolutely keep up with it. You know, I just kicked completely sideways and left lines back at the stoplight, and you won't do that with a completely stock, but the few mods that I did, it makes it so much more fun to drive than what it was completely stock, and it's just worth it for the smile factor at that point. So that will conclude this video. I just wanted to give my thoughts on why, if you have one of these cars and you thought about modifying it, why you probably should. If you want to keep it completely stock, that's fine too. No issues about the people that want to do that. It's their car. They can do what they want to do with it. But if you want to get to that next level of performance with these, and you've kind of thrown around the idea a little bit of, you know, maybe I should do a pulley on it, but I'm not sure. Yeah, definitely do it. It's completely worth it. You can always put the stock pulley back on if you want to. I don't know if anyone has ever done that, but you have that option if you really wanted to. But I just wanted to give my thoughts on that, and from my perspective of what it was completely stock to where I have it right now. And who knows, maybe later on this summer I'll come up with a video saying why you need to put an aftermarket blower on your Cobra instead of keeping the stock Eden. But we'll see when I get to that point. But thanks for watching, everyone. I really appreciate it, and until next time.